Welcome to The Winning Edge, the podcast where champions are built and legacies are made. I'm Leonard Wheeler, former NFL player turned entrepreneur of 24 years and co-executive director of the NFL Legends community. After years of being on the field, I've learned that the real game starts when the stadium lights go out. This show is your all-access pass to the mindset, strategies, and leadership lessons that fuel success beyond sports. Each week, we will dive into what it truly takes to win in business, leadership, and life. We'll discuss how elite athletes, game-changing entrepreneurs, and industry leaders turn discipline into dominance and setbacks into comebacks. The next play is yours. So let me ask you a question. Let me ask you something. Have you ever said yes while everything in your gut was screaming no? Maybe it was a relationship that felt right but drained your peace, or that job that paid well but it cost you your soul and your peace. You know, sometimes we just want to do that one more commitment when our body and our spirit and our mind is begging us for rest. But sometimes we just smile and we nod and we say yes. And we know deep down now, we had just betrayed our future self. Like, we know that. So on today's episode of The Winning Edge, we're confronting a truth that I think most of us avoid. I know I avoid sometimes. And sometimes it's the hardest battles that we fight are the ones where we walk away from what we want because what we need is peace, clarity, and alignment. So we're going to talk about how do you walk away from those things that you want. In better words, how do you say no when you want to say yes, but you know you need to say no? How do you walk away and say no when you know you want to say yes, but you really need to say no? And I think it's called wisdom. Now, James 1:5 says, if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask God, and it will be given. And we know that wisdom doesn't always show up in fireworks. Sometimes it shows up in a whisper of no. So today we're talking about the no that doesn't feel like a win at first, but turns out that it protects our destiny. So it doesn't feel like a win, but it protects our destiny. So we're going to talk about how do we learn the necessary no. So I titled this The Necessary No. So I'm Leonard Wheeler. I'm your host of the Winning Edge podcast. And today we're going to talk about the power of restraint. We're exploring called The Necessary No, those moments when saying yes might win the crowd, but saying no wins the war. And that war is the war within, right? In a world that celebrates business, the hustle, I got to get my hustle on, and overcommitment, we're here to honor the strain that it takes to walk away from something good to pursue something great. Let's first talk about the inner conflict, right? Because we know it starts with the inner conflict. Why do we say yes when we know it's not right? Why do we say yes when we know it's not right? The answer isn't always weakness. So don't say, oh, that person just weak. You know, if they would gird themselves more. Well, let me tell you something. Even when we're girded with the word, it's hard to say no at times. Sometimes it's fear of missing out, fear of disappointing others, fear of looking ungrateful. Think about it. Somebody give you an opportunity. The last thing you want to do is look ungrateful as if you don't appreciate it. So what do? You say yes. But Proverbs says the fear of man lays a snare. So what does that mean? The fear of man lays a snare. Sometimes they don't know that they're laying a snare, but sometimes the opportunity could be a snare if it's taking you away from something. But it says, but whoever trusts in the Lord is safe, which means that the Father is going to protect us from that moment. So what happens when we stop making decisions out of fear? We start making decisions from our faith. And we know that faith and fear both have the same definition, believing in what you can't see, but it's the one that we feed. So let me tell you a story. And I'm just going to name this person Marcus. Marcus was a rising star in his industry. He was in his early 30s, brilliant, respected. He had just led a record-breaking project and was quoted by one of the biggest firms in his field. They flew him out first class, private dinners, six-figure signing bonus. I mean, he was getting ready to rise up. He was going to level up as we talk about it. The offer wasn't just tempting. It was transformational. Now, the offer wasn't just tempting. It was transformational, not just for Marcus. It was transformational for his family and even maybe for his legacy. But as the meetings went on, Marcus started to feel something strange. It wasn't fear. It wasn't doubt. It was something deeper. It was conviction. So conviction, as the scripture says, I always strive to keep a clear conscience before God and man. Conviction is our conscience. It's that discernment. It's that Holy Spirit that God had left with us, what Jesus left with us. And he says he's going to be our comforter. And it provides us that conviction, not condemnation, but conviction. So he sat in his hotel one night looking out over the city skyline. And he said to his good friend that was with him, I should be excited, right? And his friend was like, yeah, man, you should be excited. I mean, this is a big opportunity, but I feel empty. This would change my life, but not in a way that I want. Like, I'll be living someone else's dream. What does he mean? He'll be living someone else's dream. He has everything he wants right here. Six-figure signing bonus, first class, dinners, people. So he knew the company culture wasn't a fit. He knew the role would pull him away from his young kids at that time. And he knew if he said yes, it would be a win for his career, but a loss to his calling. Oh my gosh. So he said no. He turned down the money. He turned down the title, and he turned down the applause. And let me just stay there for a second. As a former NFL player, the applause, the fans coming out of the tunnel, you got this, we believe in you. Those are the things sometimes we fight for. And that's sometimes what gets us to come back out of retirement and play again, because the applause, the camaraderie. And let me just tell you, the world thought Marcus was crazy. But do you know what happened next? Can you guess? 6 months later, Marcus started his own boutique firm. And guess what? They were on his own terms. So today he's leading a purpose-driven company, spending real time with his family and mentoring the next generation. So that no at that particular time looked like a setback. It became the foundation for everything he was actually called to build. So in Matthew 16:26 asks, what good is it for a man to gain the world, but yet lose his soul? Let me just tell you, it's easy for us to sometimes gain the world, and we have everything at our hands, we have everything at our feet, and we lose our soul in the midst of it. So that verse is different when you're starting at your dream and realizing it might become a prison, right? Marcus didn't walk away from success. He walked towards his significance. And that's really how I look at it. And it all started with saying no. So this episode is for anyone standing at the crossroads where your desires and your destiny are pulling in opposite directions, right? And it's also for those parents that sometimes as a parent, I'm a parent of 3 kids. Sometimes it feels that if you say no and your kids are going, but everybody's going to this party, you're so strict. You're always saying no, and you feel like you want to be that peacemaker and say yes. And so sometimes we give in and say yes, but we know what's best for our children at that particular time. We pray over them to lead them. And at some point, we hope that they will understand that that no was just trying to get you to say yes to the right things. So, saying no is often a test of trust, a test of values, a test of long-term vision over short-term applause. I want to give you just a performance perspective. Let me give you a performance perspective. Lean in for a second. According to the Harvard Business Review, high performers are more likely to say yes to opportunities. Well, we know that's not rocket science, even when they're already overcommitted. Why? Because they fear being left out, seeming difficult, or losing momentum. Think about it. You're in your job right now. You're saying yes to everything. Oh, yeah, I got this. Your empathy is so high to where you don't know how to say no because you're still trying to prove yourself. So you're saying yes to everything. You're overwhelmed. You're taking all of it home. You take all of it to work. You're not getting it done. It looks like you're procrastinating, but really you're overwhelmed and you're burnt out. Even the American Psychological Association talks about how this overcommitment behavior leads to burnout, decision fatigue, and even a drop in executive functioning. So listen to that again. Overcommitment means saying yes to everything, leads to burnout, decision fatigue, and even a drop in executive functioning. Which means if you're saying yes to everything over here, you're saying no to something. That's what it means. So saying no isn't just selfishness. It's about sustainability. But I know you're saying, Leonard, man, you just don't get it. You just don't understand. Okay, so I recently just asked the CEO. I said, tell me the biggest no you've ever said. And he said, I turned down a $2 million endorsement deal because it didn't align with my values. Whoa. He said, everybody thought I was crazy. I said, well, I'm thinking you're crazy unless you're going to tell me more of what it was. But that no kept him within his integrity and peace. And I'm like, that's powerful. How do you say no to a $2 million endorsement deal? You say it because you understand what your values and your integrity and your morals mean to you. Because at the end of the day, peace isn't a perk, it's a priority. So here's what neuroscience tells us. If you think about the science of saying no, what does neuroscience say? Every decision drains your brain's glucose and energy. What? Every decision drains your brain's glucose and energy. Say that fast. Drains your brain. So too many yes responses leads to decision fatigue. Why? Because when you're actually saying yes, you're saying no to something else, just like I said a second ago. So saying no actually strengthens your prefrontal cortex. What? Saying no strengthens my prefrontal cortex. And we always talk to our kids. We're like, you haven't even developed the front of your brain yet until you're 27. So I'll let you take that wherever you want. So the part of the brain that's responsible for logic and future planning is strengthened when we learn how to say no. And the psychologists call it the opportunity cost principle. So the opportunity cost principle is every yes is also a no to something else. it answers, it says exactly what I said earlier. So Galatians 5 tells us this. It is the freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by the yoke of slavery. Now, what that's saying is sometimes our yoke is our addiction to approval. Whoa. Sometimes our yoke, that means the things that keeps us in bondage, in slavery, keeps us from being able to be who we are, keeps us from freedom and peace, is our addiction to approval. You want to be approved by everyone all the time. And that makes you say yes to everything. So let's talk about the winning edge framework, and then we're going to kind of get to the end of this session. Let's talk about the checklist. Would this yes pull me away from my assignment or anchor me deeper in it? So if I said yes, would it pull me away from my assignment or anchor me deeper in it? Am I saying yes to avoid guilt or conflict, or from alignment and clarity? So am I saying yes to avoid guilt or conflict, or alignment and clarity? Number 3, what's the price of this yes in time, energy, faith, or focus? What is the price of this yes? If I say yes now, will I wish I said no in 6 months? You have to be able to answer these things. Do a pros and cons. Write it down. Make it plain. If this yes, is this yes creating noise or building momentum? Is it doing both? Is it creating noise, which is confusion and distortion? Or is it building momentum towards what you want, what you need to move forward? Is it creating a clear path to you in your mindset to where you're like, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to put together a blueprint and I'm going to write this out and I'm going to create this momentum, because this yes means yes. It means that I'm going to go with it. If the answer isn't clear, delay the yes. And I know what you're saying, Leonard. I can't always, everybody's urgent is my urgent right now. Well, everybody's urgent is not my urgent. And at some point, we have to get to where we have to be able to lean back and say, give me a second. Like, let me figure this out. I know everybody's pulling and they're wanting you to give them an answer right now. And if you don't give them an answer right now, you don't love them. You don't respect them. You don't respect authority. You don't respect me as your supervisor, your manager, your CEO, your leader. Yes, I do. And that's exactly why I'm saying, give me a moment so that when I give you my yes or no, it is to make sure that you understand that it is for your good as well as mine. So how do we wrap this up? And what are the key takeaways? The real win isn't always saying yes. It's knowing when to say no, because boundaries protect your greatness. So here's the winning ass challenge of the week. Learn how to say a disciplined no. Learn how to say a disciplined no. And if you say yes, commit to the yes. What I'm tired of is people saying yes all the time and they're acting like they didn't commit to the yes. If you're going to say yes, commit to the yes. But don't say yes and then talk about how overwhelmed you are when you are a big girl or a big man and all you have to do is be a grown up and own your own yes or no. Because what I don't like is that when we start wanting other people to own our yes or our no. That's not for me to own. That's for you to own. Because, we always talk about I need for people to respect me. I need for people to trust me and to know that I'm stepping up, that I'm leveling up. Well, then you need to show your work. Stop talking. Stop and show up. Stop talking and show up. and stop talking about everybody else around you in terms of what they're doing. And if we learn how to pay more attention to ourselves and our stepping up and stop pointing fingers at everybody, we would be a lot better off. I know I'm getting off on a tangent right now, but I'm going to bring it back. Bringing it back. Anyway, today's session is called The Necessary No. Winning when it hurts. Because sometimes no's hurt. But also, yes can hurt in the long run. So don't give a temporary yes and then you have a long-term no. Because sometimes that's how it works. I appreciate you. DM me. Let me know what you would like to hear. Let me know the biggest no you've ever said. I would love to hear from you. God bless you. And thanks for tuning in. Peace out. Thank you for tuning in and listening to this week's episode of The Winning Edge. You can write in and ask your questions on my Instagram page at Leonard Wheeler 7, and I will address your questions on an upcoming episode. If this episode helped you, I would love for you to share it with your friends, colleagues, and family. Share the episode with those that you feel can benefit from it. You can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok, X, and LinkedIn, found in the show notes. I would greatly appreciate it if you would rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe now and let's build your legacy.